Hello, welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Josh Shepherdson at Beachhead 50, and we know we only have a 5-game slate tonight, but that means we have 10 pitchers, well, at least 10 starting pitchers that are going tonight, and we're going to be talking about each one, whether we like them, whether we don't, why, if they're GPP plays, if they're cash plays, if you consider them in both, and you're obviously going to need to find yourself, a little bit of swerves tonight, especially in your GPPs if you're going to be playing, because a lot of people are going to be on this first guy we're going to talk about here in cash games, and I don't think he's a bad tournament option. Of course, your favorite play on a day like this when it's a short slate, still going to be a good play in tournaments, of course, but should be pretty heavily owned. So we're going to try to help you find a little bit of an edge also.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so starting off here with your top pitcher, we're going to do FanDuel first, and then talk also about how they match up and things like that on DraftKings. So your first pitcher here is going to be Tyson Ross. You got Tyson Ross is a slight underdog, actually, interestingly enough, against the Angels tonight. He's sitting there at a plus 125 underdog, which you don't love with your starting pitcher, especially when he's the most expensive. He's at $9,000 here tonight on FanDuel, and his DraftKings price a little bit higher at $9,500. But he's got to be your top option. It's by far the highest strikeout rate, 26.7%. You're a little bit concerned about the walk rate, 12.5%. But the Angels don't walk a ton. They're not very patient hitters. 13.1% swing and strike rate really gives you a lot of confidence in him. And then a 65% ground ball rate is absolutely elite. Among the league leaders, I believe he's second behind Brett Anderson. So he's going to be your obvious top option. I think, especially on DraftKings, you're going to need to have two pitchers. I think Ross has to be one of them in cash games. And no significant price increase, just $500. So I think that he's in play equally on both sites for me.
Yeah, he's my top play on both sites as well. As you said, big strikeout potential, which really alleviates some concerns about that potential for the no decision or the loss. As long as he's punching out batters, which we expect him to do, based on his strikeout rate, the Angels don't have a huge strikeout rate. They're actually just a little bit below 20%. But they also don't walk, which is huge. If they're not going to patiently work walks off of Ross, then he should be able to pitch a little bit deeper into games. He should avoid his biggest pitfall, which is getting a little wild and issuing some free passes. So I do like Ross quite a bit tonight. I think that he has to be where you start your cash games lineups. But as you said, you can get him in GPPs, and I especially like him on DraftKings in GPPs because you can do some creative things with maybe your second pitcher or your lineup that will allow you to do some swerving from the field while still getting who should be easily the highest scoring pitcher on the night.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, significant difference, as you'll see, as far as strikeout rates, and obviously strikeouts very heavily weighted. He's not giving up a lot of home runs. He doesn't give up a lot of base runners either outside of the walks. So as far as hits, he doesn't give up a ton. So you got to like that on DraftKings where, a team that's not very patient at the plate, you want to take advantage of that and try to get yourself some exposure to the top pitcher, especially on this short slate. So we're in agreement there. Tyson Ross, your top pitcher. Get some GPP exposure as well because he has such big upside. All right, moving on to the next pitcher, Jake Odorizzi, $8,600 on FanDuel. Over on DraftKings, he's the third most expensive pitcher, actually at $8,000. Facing off against Seattle. And this one's going to be interesting because as you look at the Mariners' numbers, last year they were really good against right-handed pitching. This year, not so much. They're 20th in the league in WOBA at 299. And 158 team ISO is nice, but a lot of that due to the fact that Nelson Cruz seemingly has an ISO of about 1 million right now. And, his 17 home runs really carrying those numbers. 21.5% strikeout rate for the Mariners. Odorizzi's much different pitcher than he was last season. Remember last season he couldn't keep the ball on the ground. He was giving up a lot of home runs, but he was also striking out a lot of batters. Now this year he's not striking out a lot of batters, 19.6%. But he's keeping the ball on the ground at 40%. So it's one of those guys you can't have it all. You either get the high strikeout rate with the more risk, but now seems like less risk but less upside. So I think he's more of a secondary cash game play for me than he is a GPP play because I just don't think he has huge upside tonight against Seattle.
He definitely is my second favorite cash games pick, especially on FanDuel where it's only one pitcher. I prefer him to Brett Anderson is my third on FanDuel, but I like the fact he pitches deeper into the games. While he hasn't struck out a lot of batters this year, interestingly, his swinging strike rate is not far off from what it was last year. So I do think there's a little bit of strikeout potential there that maybe is bubbling below the surface, and that we don't see in that strikeout rate just yet. Today could be a key for that because the Mariners do strike out quite a bit. So I do like him in cash games, especially at one pitcher at FanDuel where it's one pitcher. But he's also an interesting play, I think, as your SP2. If you want to go with Ross on DK and maybe spend up on pitching a little bit. Also in GPPs, maybe pair him with another arm and swerve off of Ross. Get yourself that W. Limits the base runners. Does a good job of not walking batters. He shaved his walk rate down quite a bit this year. Actually shaved it in half from a good walk rate last year to an elite walk rate this year, basically. And I agree with you. The upside's not quite what it was last year because he hasn't punched batters out. But I do think that there is a little bit more strikeout upside than we've seen thus far.
Yeah, and he's a small favorite at -128, and the lowest run total of the night is just 7 runs now in Tampa Bay. Obviously more of a pitcher's park there, so you feel like there's some security there with him in that low total. And, you think that Tampa Bay, we'll get to Roenis Elias in a few minutes here, but Tampa Bay actually hits lefties pretty well. They do strike out a lot also, but you got to think he gets a little bit of run support here. And Vegas doesn't think it'll be a lot, but they think it'll be some, so I think that he's certainly I'll say low-risk, medium-reward type of guy for tonight.
That's a fair assessment. I'll agree with that.
All right, let's move on here. Next, we're going down the FanDuel list, so it's not going to be particularly in order on both sides. Drew Hutchison, whatever you'd like to call him, $7,600 on FanDuel. DraftKings, he's at $7,200. Now, this is a game where Drew Hutchison is not in a great spot, mostly because he is a -160 favorite. You obviously like that, but a 9-run total here. You can't love that at all here. You really don't want to be targeting pitchers on a short slate in the highest total. So for me, Hutchison's a GPP play for those reasons. But outside of that, I'm just not a big fan. I don't think I'll be playing any Andrew Hutchison tonight outside of multi-entering some GPPs.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Andrew Hutchison because I feel like he's in trouble. So we're going to scold him like his mom probably used to do.
We got to find his middle name.
Yeah, exactly.
Andrew Lee Hutchison.
Yeah. Get in here, you're in trouble. He's at the Rogers Center, so he is at home getting scolded, basically. But the fact that he has just a 44.2% ground ball rate, actually up from last year significantly, but we know he has a track record of giving up fly balls. It does worry me at the Rogers Center. Big park factors for homers and doubles and triples. So balls hit in the air have a tendency to do a lot of damage at the Rogers Center. So if he can maintain that 44.2% ground ball rate, sweet. But he's at 39%, just over 39 for his career. His ERA looks a little bit unlucky with just a 4.21 FIP. But again, I don't see that necessarily his luck turning tonight at home. Really, just a tough venue for any pitcher, and so I'm going to be avoiding him. Yes, you get that contrarian low ownership angle if you use him in GPPs, but there's a reason he's low owned, and in this case, I'm not going to be using him. There's actually some hitters in that White Sox lineup that I plan to target against him, namely Jose Abreu, priced awesome at FanDuel, and even Adam LaRoche if you want to go off of Abreu. But yeah, I'm gonna be avoiding Drew Hutchison tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Also, Jered Weaver is your next guy, and he's a really interesting play. I know neither you and I are a big believer in the guy, but he's pitched well over his last couple games, so this is probably going to be the most interesting play of the night as far as your middling options go. $7,500 on FanDuel for Jered Weaver, $8,500 on DraftKings right there. That puts him in the no way in hell category for me, but he's facing off against the San Diego team who hasn't been very good against righties. They're 24th in the league, 298 team WOBA, 144 ISO. Same strikeout rate as the Mariners here, 21.5%. This is an interesting play because he is at home in a pitcher's park, but you look at his numbers, and I mean, you got an 11.9% strikeout rate. I mean, that is not a typo. He doesn't strike him out. He also doesn't walk anyone. He has the lowest walking rate of any pitcher on tonight's slate, at least this season. But he also has one of the lower swinging strike rates and also one of the lowest ground ball rates. So, actually, among the qualified pitchers tonight, he has the lowest ground ball rate, 39.5%. I don't like Jered Weaver. I do like the Padres. He might pitch a decent game. As you look at what he's done, he's been efficient. He hasn't been running up pitch counts, so he's been pitching deep. But he's not striking anyone out. I don't think he has any sort of upside, especially at his DraftKings price. I'll be getting myself some San Diego Padres bats, and you guys can continue to be believers in Jered Weaver because I'm not.
Looking at his stat line and his lack of missing bats, you'd think there was a time machine from the dead ball era, and Jered Weaver happened to hop in it and fast forward to today. I mean, it's unbelievable how few bats he's missing, and I mean, I hate to belabor the point, but the guy's not throwing hard anymore. Not that he was ever a hard thrower, but we're talking about the lowest fastball velocity in the game right now, and for guys like Justin Upton and Matt Kemp, those are cookies. I mean, he just doesn't have the secondary stuff to really keep them off balance. Working in Weaver's favor, I mean, we can't say all bad things. Vegas likes him. I mean, Vegas has the Angels as a favorite. They have a low total on the game.
Yeah.
In that sense, there's stuff to like about him. But on DraftKings, where you need those punch-outs to really have value, especially at his cost, no way that I'm using him. On FanDuel, if you feel comfortable with him as your SP1, you've got bigger marbles than I do. I can't do it. I don't like the fact that he's relying so heavily on his fielders. I mean, all those batted balls are just asking for danger, and I can't do it, man. I can't do it.
Yeah, I don't blame him. He's second most expensive pitcher on DraftKings, especially with the negatives for hits and walks there. Like you said, if you feel like it on FanDuel, he is a little bit cheaper. He's the fourth most expensive pitcher, and he does eat up innings. So if he's being efficient, that you don't get negatives all the time on FanDuel. So if he can get you 7 innings, even if he gets you only 2 or 3 Ks, he gets the win, you don't mind it. But, I mean, that's a big if. That's a lot of big ifs at the time right now. So just no thanks for me. As we move on next, Roenis Elias, $7,200 on FanDuel. He's got a nice price on DraftKings as well, $7,700. And this is a guy who has kind of shown it all over the last few seasons. He had a big strikeout rate for a while, then he had a big walk rate. He's not a guy that keeps the ball on the ground great, right around league average. 18.9% strikeout rate's around league average, and 6.8% walk rate is right around league average. So this is a guy who's really nothing special, but he's also not a guy you want to go out of your way to pick on. And, you know, his matchup tonight at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's numbers against lefties are actually pretty good this year, as we alluded to earlier. 6th in the league in Team WOBA at 336. But then when you look over at the next category, at strikeouts, you see them at 4th highest at 24%. So we're talking Pirates, Brewers, Rockies, Cubs, Mets. All teams we know struggle against left-handed pitching by striking out a lot. This is a team that gets on base, and they have a nice 188 team ISO, but they strike out a ton. So he's got the strikeout upside, but he's also really risky because this is a really good, one of the better teams in the league against southpaws.
That sounds like the recipe for a GPP pick, if I ever heard one.
Yep.
You referred to him as your GPP pick that you liked in the late slate on the FanDuel Punch-Out earlier, and I'll second that. Good price point. He's smack dab in the middle of the pitching prices, and that strikeout upside is alluring. He's not a huge strikeout pitcher. His swinging strike rate, according to FanGraphs, is 9.2%, which is not far off of the league average of 9.6%. Weird, because his strikeout rate is roughly just a tick below the league average. So that's going to get a boost facing a Rays offense that does miss making contact with the baseball. And when they do get the bat on the ball, they've done some damage, as the WOBA number that you spit out illustrates. But that's the type of volatile arm that you want to grab in GPPs, the guy that can get you those punch-outs that people might be scared off of because of that WOBA figure. So the low ownership should be there. I mean, it's not going to be super low because it is a small slate, so you're going to see a mix of these guys. It's just the nature of the beast. But I like the price point at both FanDuel and DraftKings. $7,700 is not a bad DraftKings price. You can comfortably put him in as your SP2 if you want to use Tyson Ross even. And if you're chasing strikeouts today, I think that's your best strikeout combination is Ross and Elias. And I think more people are going to be on Odorizzi as the betting favorite at home. So, again, you're going to get that low ownership. So, I like him in GPPs. Wouldn't use him in cash games. Pretty much it's 3 men for me in cash games. It's Ross, Odorizzi, and Brett Anderson, and that's it. But as far as GPP plays go, he looks pretty good to me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, like you said, it almost seems like bad hitting gives a boost to mediocre to bad pitching more often than not. And we've seen some really bad pitchers have some nice games this year, basically just because the other team isn't hitting the ball and they don't have any sort of confidence. So, definitely some big upside there, but certainly very risky. If you play them in your cash games, that is not our fault. We told you
exactly.
Not to.
We don't take credit for that.
Yeah.
Oh, unless you win, of course. Then we said nice things about Rowan Elias, and you could just forget the fact that we said not to play him in cash games.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, we said play him, but play him conservatively here. Next up, David Phelps. $6,900 on FanDuel. His price on DraftKings way, way nicer, $5,200. We're going to see, that's our biggest swing here, so we're going to see something interesting with him. As you look at his numbers so far this season, he's not allowed a home run yet in 42 innings pitched, which is impressive. Obviously, he's in a pitcher's park at PNC today. Once again, another guy that's right around league average, 42% ground ball rate. His swing and strike rate is abysmal, 4.9, one of the lowest in the league. 7.8% walk rate, you don't love. But, this is a guy that he's efficient. He doesn't strike many people out. He's not fooling anybody. He's a contact pitcher. They're putting the ball in play. You're a little bit concerned about that, especially against this Pittsburgh team that hasn't been particularly great against righties this year. But they do have some big-time upside. You look at the numbers for the Pirates here, 22nd in the league, 298 team WOBA, 130 ISO, 19.6% strikeout rate. But I feel like those numbers are a little bit misleading because they were really struggling earlier this season. You got guys like Andrew McCutchen who are on fire right now. A lot of guys who are starting to step up for this team. And I think that Phelps makes for an interesting, probably a second cash game pitcher for me. If you want to go really cheap and you're trying to load up some bats on DraftKings. Not a guy that I love in GPPs because I am a little bit worried about some of these Pittsburgh bats. And like we said, he has no upside. A guy with less than 5% swing strike rate doesn't have any sort of upside in the GPP unless it gets really fortunate. Like that game he had earlier this season, he pitched against Philly, 7 innings. Obviously, that was Philly. Had a good game against Atlanta as well, but still gave up 9 hits and 3 runs, 8 Ks. That was a little bit misleading. He's not going to get called third strikes all the time like he did in that game. Second cash game option at best for me on DraftKings. Not a fan on FanDuel at all.
Yeah, I'm going to be fading him entirely on FanDuel. Probably not going to use him on DraftKings either, and it's more speaks to the fact that there just aren't the bats to spend money on tonight. 5,200 is actually a really good price under normal circumstances for him as an SP2 because you can count on him piling up innings. Looking at his FanGraphs page is interesting because he's pitched to a 3.21 ERA. FIP thinks that he's been better than that with a 2.72 FIP, but FIP doesn't normalize home run rate, so his xFIP is at 4.03. So it's one of the more interesting stat lines for a pitcher that I've seen all year. And it really comes, Phelps pitches to contact, doesn't get strikeouts, walk rate's more good than great. Ground ball rate is low, but you don't worry about that so much at PNC Park because it is a home run suppressing venue. But as you said, early season numbers for the Pirates really weigh down their total season totals. And remember, Andrew McCutchen, not only is he on fire now, but he was injured early, and that really hurt that lineup quite a bit. They've since moved on from Jordy Mercer starting every day. We got Gung Ho Kong playing regularly. His bat's been much better than Mercer, so I'm certainly leery of Phelps, and I just don't see myself owning him, any shares of him today.
No, not at all. I think he's just very risky. I just like the $5,200 price tag on DraftKings.
It is.
If you're trying to stack any and every big hitter, go ahead and get him in there with one of these other guys you feel okay about. I don't think that's a bad way to go.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say no. That's 100% true. The $5,200 price point is low for what Phelps is, and if you like some of these other hitters, if you want to grab $5,300 Edwin Encarnacion, $4,800 D Gordon, $4,700 Josh Donaldson, basically go down the line and grab the most expensive hitter in each of these contests. $5,200 David Phelps will allow you to do that, and that's certainly not the craziest thing I've ever heard.
No, not at all. Moving on next to a guy who's definitely not the craziest thing we've ever heard. We're both looking at him tonight as well. Brett Anderson. He's $6,700 on FanDuel, $7,000 on DraftKings. I'll let you go ahead and take the lead on this one because I know that you are a fan of Brett Anderson tonight.
I am a Brett Anderson fan. He is currently leading the league in ground ball rate. He's doing a pretty nice Dallas Keuchel impersonation, save for the pitching deep into games, which is really the biggest knock on Anderson. He's basically been a 6-inning pitcher so far this year. But you also have to figure that the Dodgers have probably been a little bit cautious. He does have an injury track record. We're now almost 2 months into the season. I'd expect him to get to pitch a little bit deeper into games. His fastball velocity is up this month. His slider swinging strike rate is up this month. Really looks like he's starting to round into form. Then no longer the round form that he took on when he was an A. He's actually slimmed down quite a bit. But jokes about his appearance aside, Brett Anderson looks like a good arm to me tonight. I really love the price point. He allows you to do a lot on FanDuel, just $6,700. Even on DraftKings, $7,000 price tag, great SP number 2, especially in cash games. Not a lot of strikeout upside, but because his slider is starting to miss some more bats, I do think that there might be a little bit of a hidden strikeout potential there. Maybe 4 to 5 instead of, if he only goes 6 innings, maybe 5 and 7 innings, something like that. Keeps the ball on the ground at the league best rate, as I said. So not a lot of home run scare to be had, especially against the Braves lineup that just isn't very good against left-handed pitchers. Ranking the bottom 5 in WRC plus against lefties this year. You figure their best hitters in the lineup, Freddie Freeman, Nick Markakis, don't hit left-handed pitching as well as they hit righties. So I feel very comfortable using Brett Anderson in cash games and GPPs just because that price allows you to do so much, and I think that you're getting a safe, fairly high floor with him.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I mean, he's got massive, I won't say massive upside, but he has massive stability, I'll say. He's a low-risk, medium-reward type of guy who, he's been in the double digits on almost every single game of FanDuel this year. So, like you said, I mean, he's a big favorite, too. So, a lot of things going in favor. Braves striking out 7th most in the league against lefties. So, I mean, that definitely your only viable cheap option, I'd say. And,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 3 more cheap options here. And this won't take long. Charlie Morton, $6,500 on FanDuel. He is $6,500 also on DraftKings. And no thanks. How about you?
I mean, Charlie Morton, if he were in mid-Chuck season form, I still wouldn't like him. And he's making his first start off the disabled list this year. Get your left-handed bats as you can from the Marlins. Struggles with lefties. Pretty tough on righties. And some of those righties, even a guy like Giancarlo Stanton, I mean, Chuck does a pretty good job of keeping the ball on the ground, but doesn't miss a lot of bats, and Stanton can put a hurt on a ball. So I say go ahead and fade him without any fear of that biting you in the behind.
Yeah, and I'm going to continue to call him Chuck ever since you said it this morning. I love it. Chuck Morton, GTFO my lineups right now.
Yep.
Next up, Hector Noesi, $6,000 on FanDuel and $4,700 on DraftKings. Looks like DraftKings pretty much nailed this one. 9-run total, bad pitcher, against a team at home. Yes, they do hit righty or lefties better than righties, but going to the Rogers Center, coming off an injury, one of the worst starting pitchers in the league, if you ask me. I think it'd be hard for you or anyone else to disagree with that. Vegas expects this guy to get crushed tonight, and so do I.
You could price Hector Noesi for a $4,700 stipend to use on the rest of your roster, so negative $4,700, and I wouldn't be rostering him. So if that doesn't speak volumes about what I think of Hector Noesi at the Rogers Center, I'm not really sure what does.
Yeah, I mean, this one's pretty straightforward. You don't like targeting pitchers with big totals anyway unless you're just trying to be different. He doesn't have much upside. He doesn't have any floor. Facing probably the best offense. It's on the, actually, by far the best offense that's playing tonight. Outside of the Dodgers. So no thanks. Not touching that. And then speaking of the best offense tonight, every other night really, especially against right-handed pitching, you've got the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they're going against Mr. Williams Perez, Mr. First name, last name, $5,800 on FanDuel. And nice little cheap $4,200 price tag on DraftKings. And this is going to bring us back to exactly what we were talking about last time. Just to put this in perspective, the Dodgers against right-handed pitching, despite their recent lows, 352 team WOBA, 207 team ISO. That's not Adrian Gonzalez. That's team ISO. Walking 10.4% of the time. 125 WRC plus. It's not even close. This team's the best in the league against righties. This guy is not a good righty. Get your Dodgers bats and stay far, far away from Williams Perez tonight.
Yeah, I think recency bias is going to probably come into play here, and people are going to say, oh, the Dodgers offense, how can you call them the best in baseball? But, I mean, the season's longer than the last week, and they put a hurting on right-handed pitching for the most part this year. And Williams Perez, guy that got his feet wet in the big leagues, making 2 relief appearances before getting a start, was pretty good in the minors earlier in the year, pretty good in the minors last year, but not a guy that misses bats. And if you're not going to miss bats against the Braves, or I'm sorry, for the Braves against the Dodgers, you're asking for some trouble with this Dodgers lineup. Guys like Jock Peterson, Adrian Gonzalez, even Howie Kendrick can really square the baseball up and do some damage. So while that price point of 58 on FanDuel and 4,200 on DraftKings might seem tempting and enticing and all that good stuff, no. Just no.
Yeah, I say you're just as likely to get a negative out of him as you are to get the 10 to 12 that you need to pay out that small price tag. So for me, just don't do it to yourself. I mean, if you want to be the ultimate contrarian play, that would be it tonight. But at this point, it's one of those situations where you're being contrarian just to be stupid here, and you're hurting yourself more than you're helping yourself. You might as well just play a pitcher who's not pitching tonight and at least get yourself that guaranteed 0.
Yeah, let us help you by telling you to not do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, hopefully we helped you out on tonight's slate for the pitcher nail down. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. I'm at BigGoodLeague42. He is at BChad50. And check out all of our content to help you out on tonight's slate as well at dailyfantasycafe.com. And we will see you guys next time.